Okay, can everybody hear me and see me? Great. Okay. Well, a lot of great turnout. People are still making their way in. I'm also hoping that there's just men on this call. If you do happen to be a woman who has managed to sneak in here, it would be most supportive if you could remove yourself from this space. So I'm just going to feed into the situation right now just to connect a little bit with the group. One of the biggest complaints that a lot of the women that I work with and speak to, one of the biggest complaints they have that they bring up is, where are the men doing their work? And the fact that there's 90 of you in here right now is absolutely beautiful. I'm really looking forward to being able to bring to you all so much of what I have had the pleasure and the gift of being able to figure out along my process. So, what I'd like to ask you all first is, who here has either worked with me in some capacity before or been on an event with me before? If you can just raise your hand, just so I can flick through and see. Okay, you don't actually need to digitally raise your hand, just put it up on the screen so I can see you. Everyone, please have your video on as well. Okay, so by a raise of hands, who here this is literally your first contact with me? You've never heard of me before. You saw a post on Instagram and you're just like, okay, here I am. Or your partner forced you to be here. You know what? All right, I see you, Lloyd. All right. Keep them up. Keep them up. Okay, great. So there's some new faces here and some new people. So what I'd first like to do is just intro the event a little bit on how it's going to go. The first part is, I've been doing the work that I've been doing in different ways, and it naturally has come to the place that it's arrived to now for about a decade, for about 10 years officially, much longer in terms of my own self-work. I've never been to an event or a workshop in my life. Everything that I'm here to share with you is coming from my direct experience. My background is traditional Chinese medicine. That's what I started as an acupuncturist. And through that means of engaging with people, I started to see a lot of the dysfunction that we were holding around our ability to feel ourselves, our nature, our truth, our sexuality, which then started to pull me deeply into the yin and yang of how we function, or the masculine and feminine. And that kind of began the process of me figuring out some more things within myself, while also working directly with men and later working directly with women. So I just want to kind of lay that as the foundation. I'm not here to repeat stuff at you. I'm not a research artist. This is not coming from me just reading a bunch of books. This is coming from me spending hundreds, if not thousands, of hours in rooms with myself, with men, and also with women, trying to figure out how everything actually functions. So that's why I'm excited about this call, because I get to chop it up with all of you and share as much as I possibly can in the time that we have. We will go over time, so be prepared for that. We're going to take a break for maybe 20 minutes at a certain point, because I don't want to wreck anybody on this call, but just be prepared to be in it for the long haul is 80% of the work that I do is energetic, meaning that 20% of my work is the words and the information that I'm sharing with you. You don't need to believe in energy. You don't need to believe in anything woo-woo. All you really are required to do on this call is to be as receptive as possible, to be as present and as in your body as possible. And as you start to feel stuff in your body, as I'm speaking to you, just allow it to move through you. The more receptive that you can be, the more that the purpose or the intention of this call, which is the realignment, which is the rebalancing, which is the reactivating and the reopening of your male frequency, the more that that can be supported. Okay, so the more aware you can be of yourself and what you're feeling, the more insight that you're going to gather from our work together. My intention here is to support and to offer transformation to you in the deepest way possible, in the deepest way that I possibly can. Just know that. All right, I want you to be able to come here. I want you to be done. If you're really serious about taking your life into your own hands, this is not just about semen retention. So I bait you all in so I can actually work with people. But this has the possibility to transform the way you relate with every single part of yourself and your life as a man. Everything I share is me expressing my experience. I'm not here to turn you into me. So whatever works for you, take it, try it out, practice it, see if it fits you, see if it resonates for you. If it doesn't, throw it away and forget about it. But I want you to do you. This is about you knowing yourself and allowing who you are be as big and as broad in your life as you possibly can be for your own kingdom and for actually bringing service to other people. Also, if there's women in the background on any of these calls, which always fucking happens, welcome. And you got to realize that the energy that I'm sharing on this call is not for you. So it may land for you in ways that are a little bit prickly. So just realize that. But also, welcome. Let's begin. So what is sexual energy? We're here to cultivate it. That's the selling point. Sexual energy is our life force. It's our vitality. It's the energy that allows us to be creative in our lives, to be engaged with life, to want to meet life, to engage with challenge. It's the thing that digests our food, that assimilates our nutrients, that allows our brain to function properly, that allows us to feel positive towards life, open towards life, receptive towards life. When we have dysfunction or perversion around our sexual essence or individual nature, based on how the society has engaged and dealt with us, we start to become very confused inside. And then we start to look for guidance and validation externally from other people, because we no longer trust ourselves at that point. Our sexual energy is going to be the thing that brings us purpose, that allows us to feel meaning in our lives. So why am I doing the event? It's because right now there is a deep demonization, you could call it, of male sexual energy. We're seen as being perverted or bad or creepy or dangerous or abusive or manipulative. Now, there are absolutely groups of men who fall into those categories because of trauma, because of the value systems that they were raised with, because they were taught that in order to get their needs met, they have to function in a predatory way. because they're not good enough just to be able to receive all the beautiful things that life and femininity has to offer by just being himself. So now he has to work very, very hard to get even close to feeling happy or powerful. The other thing we need to realize about society is that it doesn't know how to engage with men in a healthy way, because men are feared, especially healthy men, especially conscious men, especially men who live life on their own terms, because this man cannot be controlled. And if we can't be controlled, then what do governmental body systems, as an example, do? How do they strip us of our money and our freedoms then? So this runs so much deeper than semen retention. The metaphor for semen retention is essentially holding on to your power. That's what it stands for. So you can do that with your semen, or you can do that with your boundaries, or you can do that with your morals, or you can do that with your value, and whatever values you feel are important for community. They keep us perverted, and they keep us distracted, because they figured out that we love titties. They figured out that we love the female form. So what do they give us? They give us the female form in disguise, pornography. It disguises itself as connection. This is one way that they keep us perverted. They give us things like fantasy, video games, to have us sit on a couch and just stare into a screen all day and feel like we're making a difference in life on the planet. Because if we can conquer the game, then we don't have to face the rest of our lives. Sex toys, alcohol, beer is the most manly drink out there, apparently, even though it pumps you full of prolactin and estrogen. Go figure. So many of the social norms that have been set up are set up to disempower us, to confuse us, to distract us. And as long as we are living in alignment with these laws, the weaker and weaker we become, and the more that we wither away. It keeps us dispersed. They're giving us things that we use to burn up all of our energy on, things that are meaningless. But if we don't have energy, if we don't have life force, then we're not a problem. Then we'll sit down and shut the fuck up. We won't stand up for ourselves. We won't stand up for our families. We won't stand up for women, children. And we stay in that addictive loop. We stay empty and hungry. And we feel like we're broken. The only thing that's broken is the system that you've been indoctrinated into. And we really need to see that everywhere it exists. The other reason that I do this event is because of the collective male weakness that exists. Men are getting weaker and weaker. We're growing less and less of a spine. We're becoming softer and softer. And this is a gigantic problem, because we're here for things like protection, service, taking care of the consciousness of the community that we happen to find ourselves in, being leaders, but not leading so we can get stuff or take stuff from people, leading so we can actually bring people and guide people to a more beautiful existence, a more abundant life. And this collective male weakness happens through those distractions, because as long as you're distracted, you don't have to feel yourself. which is the only way that you can come to know yourself. You're also used to being shamed and guilted for your emotions, for your proclivities, for your desires. And at the same time, we end up being controlled, raised, dominated by dysfunctional feminine energy. And we're attempting to figure out how to be a man when the woman that raised us is not a man. And she shouldn't have to be a man. So the very fact that she's having to be pushed into that posture, now she's in a state of dysfunction because she's not being met. She's not being able to walk around you as a young male in a way where she's open to life, where she's being nourished, where she's being made love to. So these are all factors that tie into everything that we're going to be speaking about today and why these issues are existing. We also have no initiations. Before, there used to be very clear boundaries. When a man gets to a certain age, when a male gets to a certain age, he goes through a separation process from all of his places of security. He separates from the mother. Which is one of the most important parts of our lives as men. So we can come to a point of going, okay, it's now me. What do I want? What are my rules? What way do I want to move? Rather than being guided and directed by everything that your mother has raised you with. And I work with men right into their 50s, 60s, even 70s, who are still living their life to appease their mother. And she's not even on the planet anymore. In sentiment, it's beautiful and it's romanticized, and oh, what a good man. I call bullshit on that because he's not here to live his own life. None of us are here to appease other people or to live in the way that other people assume we should live. We're here to learn our way and to move in that direction. And this doesn't mean being nasty to your mother or hating your mother. No, this is how you love your mother. So maybe you can be one of the first men that she's ever met. So you can actually hold space for her just as a woman in her life. For me, that was one of the most beautiful gifts that I had the pleasure of experiencing. When I finally had separated myself from that energy, I was able to come back fresh, let her know my boundaries, let her know what I don't tolerate, and let her know how much I appreciate and love her, even in all the ways that she fucked up. Because we're all going to make mistakes. And we can never give to others what we've never received ourselves. So we can't expect that from our parents. As men, we have lost our authentic voice because of the distraction. Even if you went and told yourself, okay, I'm going to be direct in my communication from now on. If you don't know yourself, your communication is not direct. Your communication is not authentic. It's just brash. Please do not confuse directness with just being loud and sexually expressive. Please do not confuse that for authenticity. Authenticity is artful. It's graceful. It's powerful. Because it's you speaking directly from the energy that has put you here. It's coming from the relationship that you have to your creator, whatever that happens to be. The posture of appeasing is what starts to take over in replacement of our authentic communication. So we're trying to be everything that everyone expects of us, desperately needing external validation, desperately wanting to be loved, accepted, so much so that we will shit on what we need, that we will compromise what we need and what we want in order to have other people like and accept us. As long as you care about what other people think of you, you're never going to be free. So I want you to feel that. And if that's true for you, if you're currently maybe living your life from that posture, are you trying to see everyone approving of your actions? Because all of that, that's your relationship with your mother. Because as little boys, we were raised on a diet of praise, affection, love, versus discipline, punishment, having love removed. We would receive love when we followed the rules. And if we didn't follow the law according to mom or dad or whoever was our authority figure, love and affection was removed. Sometimes there was even physical violence or sexual violence that was a part of that discipline. So to understand where you're functioning, the way you're functioning, it's important that you understand where it might be coming from, which is why I'm sharing what I'm sharing. Once we see, which is the consciousness part of us, once we can begin to see ourselves and how we're functioning, we can do beautiful things with our lives. And we can transform so much. So how to heal, how to move through all of this and get to a place where you are embodied and you are authentic and you are free. It's going to be the deepest practice of self-love that you've probably ever stepped into. Because it's going to come up against everything in society that thinks what you're doing is selfish. It's just another word that's used to shame us. Stop being so selfish. What about other people? Well, in my experience, I'm fucking useless to other people if I am not full. So that's got to be first. If I'm not correct, if I'm not centered, anything that I do is going to come from that deficiency. And I don't want to put that on anybody. And I really hope you can examine that part of yourself, how you are attempting to give to other people that which you're not even giving to yourself. I see people be so loving and generous with others, and then they go home and they're just feeding off scraps. Be careful of that position, especially for you who are coaches, who are mentors, who are guides. It's very easy to slip into that. You come first. You have to. Then you will be potent. Then you can be powerful. Then you can be even more effective in the work that you do. So what is self-love? Because it's used a lot. It's many things. First and foremost, I believe it's the deepest accountability that we can invite ourselves into. The first part is you have to feel yourself. You have to be willing to be in this body right here, right now, and be willing to feel everything that's going on in you. The result of your decisions, of your commitments, of your lack of commitments, of your lack of discipline, how you say one thing and you go and do another thing, how untrustworthy you are. You have to feel everything. The only way we can heal is by going through it. You're never going to go over it. You're never going to be able to go around it. You have to go right back down into it. And take ownership over exactly what is present with you. Whether it's shame, sadness, confusion, guilt. Don't forget about it. Don't avoid it. Face it. Breathe through it. Your suffering and how fast you're moving in your life, and the fact that you can't even sit still, is because there's so much backup in you that's tormenting you because it's underexpressed. You're not anxious. You're underexpressed. You're not depressed. You're underexpressed. When we shut down and close down on our life force, on our beautiful male energy, and try to make it fit all these dysfunctional holes that society are presenting to us, when we try to make everything fit, that creates a minefield of explosions in us that can really, really damage us physically and mentally, emotionally. Feeling is the first step out of that. Not hiding your emotions. Not feeling anxious and then saying, oh, I have to be cool if I want to talk to this woman. Or I want to be cool in front of my friends, so I can't show anybody what I'm feeling. It's lovely for them, but you're fucking dying inside in that process. That's an act of self-hatred. You pretending to be someone that you're not is an act of self-hatred. And then unconsciously, we move out into life and we take that self-hatred out on other people, especially women, how we engage with them. You cannot know yourself if you aren't willing to feel yourself. You cannot lead yourself if you cannot feel yourself. It has to start there. Once I dropped in and began feeling the reality of how I had set my life up, I just fell apart. The difference that time was I allowed myself to fall apart and I took ownership over it. Because I had no ability to continue going the other direction, trying to pretend I was fine, trying to pretend everything was good. And once I allowed everything fall apart, I was able to see why I was doing everything that I was doing, why I was behaving the way that I was behaving, and why I was being manipulative with people, sneaky with people. So feeling is awareness. It's consciousness, but it's in the body. All of our emotional trauma gets lodged in our physicality. It doesn't have too much to do with our minds, which is what science and psychology wants us to believe. I have had people come to me who have been going to talk therapy for 10 years because of their childhood abuse. They just keep spinning it around in the washing machine. Doesn't go anywhere. They come for some body work, some energy work. The body opens, the tissues open, the breath opens. Now all that trauma leaves. And the buttons don't exist anymore. Why? Because we went through the body. The body is your master. That's where we stuff everything down. That's where we choke up on everything. So you're not as aggressive or anxious or crazy as you think you are, because one of the first things that men share with me when I express to him that he needs to be in his body and live from that place, he says, Chris, well, if I do that, I'm going to like burn the house down. I'm going to be screaming at people on the street because I'm just so angry. What I have to remind him is that that is not his nature. That is not his male energy. That's the backup communicating itself. As soon as you start to express, open those floodgates, let the emotional backup move, let the water flow downstream. Now everything in you starts to get calm. You start to actually feel sense of your real energy, of your true male essence, which is not aggressive, unless it has to be. So that's another really important point to make. The experience that you may be having in yourself currently is not so real in terms of who you are as an individual. It's the backup, it's the trauma. A question that I would like everybody here to ask themselves daily is, what do I want? This may seem like the simplest, most ridiculous question ever. Are you kidding me, Chris? I paid $127 for that. I'm surprised as well, because when I started working with men first, I had to start asking them, well, what do you want? And it was almost like a deer caught in headlights. It's like I had asked them the most complicated algebra equation, and he was frozen, and he couldn't answer me. He literally could not tell me what he wanted. He had some ideas, but we then later discovered that they were trauma-informed desires. They weren't coming from a place of clarity in him. What do I want? And then go do that. Well, Chris, but what if my partner doesn't like it? What if my partner gets angry? What if people around me disapprove? What if people around me think I'm a bad person for wanting what I want? Well, then they're clearly in the wrong place. There's clearly no compatibility here. Please, men, go for what you want and allow yourself to be firm enough in your expression to ask for what you want, unapologetically, realizing that many people will be like, you can't want that. You can't tell me what I'm supposed to want. That's insane. The level of entitlement that so many of us have been programmed to walk around with, where we think we know what's best for one another, is the result of insanity. So if you were really to question yourself, what do I want? What do I want my days to look like? Do I want to be getting up at 6 a.m. with an alarm to go and do someone else's job, to be on someone else's clock? What do you want your relationships to look like? A lot of men will be in monogamous relationships. He's not too sure why, except he thinks that's the only thing that he's supposed to be doing. Because if he doesn't do that, the woman will get upset, or people will get angry with them. So then he steps away from even inquiring as to why the idea of experiencing different varieties and different forms of feminine energy is so nourishing and appealing to him. So he just shuts that down. And when our self-inquiry shuts down, when we stop asking questions, we become idiots. We become very, very unintelligent. And then our trauma and other people are what's guiding us around by the fucking nose, because we're not willing to stand up for who we are and what we want just to be happy as men, just to be nourished as men. What she needs is going to be a little or a lot different to what we need. And that's okay. That has to be okay. But we weren't put here to pander. We weren't put here to compromise ourselves, because we love her through being as much of ourselves as we can possibly be. That is how we love her, in a way that she has never experienced herself being loved. That is how we hold her deeper than she's ever been held. Through never breaking our boundaries or our word or what we require in order to be met. That does not mean we force anyone to meet us. We're simply here to communicate who we are, what we require from a place of deep love and compassion. And we allow other people to choose whether that's something that they want to be with. Beautiful. She may not agree with it. If she is a woman who hasn't done her work and is still caught up in brainwashing and conditioning, she'll attempt to tell you how bad or wrong you are for having those desires and wants. She may even attempt to guilt you into changing your mind by telling you what an awful person you are. And you can let all of that come in, because if you know yourself, it's not going to throw you off. Maybe there's something in her traumatic reflection that is a blind spot for you, that will allow you to actually question a part of yourself and say, I wonder if she's right, what she's saying about this thing, about this part of me. I really encourage you to be totally open to criticism and challenge. Be open to be seen, because it will assist you in clarifying yourself. What I'm saying is not to have you be in this dictator type of role. Again, very important, I say this, where you are just shut off to the opinions of everybody. This is about you knowing yourself and moving from that intelligence first, while also allowing criticism, challenge, and feedback. And you choose what you take on board. And you choose what has absolutely nothing to do with you, and you just let it go. This can be very challenging at first, but the more you develop and grow in yourself, the more you know yourself, the easier it becomes to be able to engage with all of this in a healthy way. So have patience and compassion with yourself through this process of clarifying yourself, because you will make mistakes, and that's a necessity. You have to. Another thing that I wanted to bring, in my experience, most men are absolutely 100% totally inauthentic in absolutely all of their communications with women. Even men who have convinced themselves that he's being honest. Where he's still manipulating himself. He's still manipulating his words. He's still moving from a posture of, please love me, please accept me, please like me, please be intimate with me. So he never gets to feel his own potency. I truly believe that our potency as men, one of the big areas it comes from, is feeling our truth, being able to stand upright and firm and express it to the world, to express what excites us. I talk a lot about female orgasmicness when I'm working with women. That's a lot of what I publicly talk about as well. How a woman can be in a state of multiple full body bliss throughout her life whenever she chooses, and what's needed for that. What's needed for us is feeling why we're here, feeling what we're here to do. That doesn't need to be your job. That just needs to be a sense of, I am here, I am present, I am honoring myself, and I'm following through with that energy. I'm not hiding myself. I'm not trying to please others, but I'm being loving with others. And I truly believe that this is where our power arises from. Freedom, internal freedom on all levels. And how a man communicates and uses his words, if you can see, if you're present, will tell you everything about where that man's level of consciousness is currently at. As soon as someone opens their mouth, if you feel deeply enough, if you look closely enough, you can see his relationship with himself. You can feel how either confused he is or how clear he is, based on how he chooses consciously to use his words to open life in front of him. We are penetrative by nature, something that I'm going to be getting into as we go through this call. Other ways to heal is watching your behaviors, seeing what's motivating you to do the things that you're doing. Are you being motivated from lack, from trauma, to move in that direction? Or are you being motivated by turn on, by aliveness, by expansiveness, by the desire to serve? But at every level of decision making, you have to ask yourself, is that the healthy version or the unhealthy version? Even in service, there is a healthy version of service, and there's an unhealthy version of service. Watch yourself. When I first started to watch myself, I was shocked, ashamed, embarrassed at how full of shit I was. Like, wait, did I just say that to that person in that way? Ugh. Where did that come from? Who put that in me? Because that wasn't me. That wasn't respectful to me or the other person. I realized how so many of my behaviors and my actions were coming from me not feeling worthy enough for love. And I was terrified of people finding me out, actually finding out that you're not as confident as you're trying to be. You're not as solid as you're trying to be. And nobody caught me out until I met my Qigong teacher. He saw me, and that changed my entire life because he didn't let me off the hook. He pinned me against myself. So the better you are at performing and hiding yourself, the longer you can get away with this, until you meet someone of a certain level of consciousness who can actually see you. And that's a gift. Look for those people. Be open to those people. welcome challenge. This is what allows us to sharpen our sword. It's what allows us to walk the thin line between being forceful and being receptive. It teaches us creativity in the moment. It teaches us responsiveness. It teaches us the difference between being reactive and being responsive. Please don't shy away from challenge or confrontation, even if it feels like it's going to overwhelm you and kill you emotionally inside of you because it's just so terrifying. Start practicing relaxing yourself physically in these moments, to surrender to your internal feelings and your emotions rather than just stepping away and tightening up around them. Because you learning to surrender to your emotions and to your feelings and allowing them to move through you, this will teach you how to be with women without running away, without avoiding, without controlling. Your inner emotions are your internal woman. It's your inner female. And she has so much to teach you. She's also going to be in charge of about 80% of your power, just to pick a wildly random statistic out of the air. But what my statistic is attempting to communicate is that it's the most nourishing and most powerful part of your masculinity and how you deliver yourself. This is the juice in your life. It's going to come from that woman vibrating up and down your spine. Behind every powerful man is a powerful woman. That's your powerful woman. But she's inside of you. She's your intuitiveness. She's your guidance system. She's your empathy. She's your compassion for yourself first, for other people after. But if you disacknowledge your anxiety, your sadness, your loneliness, if you disacknowledge any emotion in you, you're shutting her down. It's like being with a woman externally and she goes into an emotional expression or she starts to roll into orgasm. You're like, hey, baby, you're too much. Cool it. You're shutting her down because you're removing the opportunity for her to feel and to be felt. Feel yourself. This will strengthen your masculine because the more you feel, the more you open and capacitate to energetics in your life. The more energy you have, the more overwhelmed you're going to feel, the more grounded your inner masculine has to be. But you can't develop one without the other. As soon as you start working on one, the other side of you is going to start kicking off. So these are just important things to realize as we go through the event today. Another part of the healing process, practically, is about you dropping distraction. The way you spend your time, examine it. If you're spending your time scrolling Instagram all day, or your screen time is telling you you've been on there for 4 hours, or 5, 6, 7 hours, or you're going out and you're getting drunk or smoking weed to avoid what you're feeling. All of these things are keeping you foolish. They're keeping you blind. They're keeping you distracted. As men, we need time for purposeful contemplation, where we just have time and space There's nothing else going on in it. It's just us and time and space. And we place ourselves in it, and we can just sit back and contemplate. Just think about your life. Feel into your life. Inquire about the decisions that you've made, where you currently find yourself in your life, where you may like to go in your life. Most men who have achieved some form of greatness or ingenuity or creative endeavor in life throughout history, you'll probably see that they've had a lot of time to contemplate and examine themselves, their ideas, their motivations. Social media is not downtime. Netflix is not you relaxing. You can do that if you still want to do that. But to really stay connected to yourself, you need a very focused period of time to examine. And ideally, you can have multiple opportunities throughout your day where you eventually develop the ability to live just an examinatory existence, which is essentially living in presence, living in awareness, living with a meditation to you, where you're always aware of yourself. You're always seeing what's coming through you, moment to moment. And you're choosing to move yourself very purposefully based on that which you're attempting to achieve. So I hope all of this is as clear as possible and is making sense. Create boundaries. Look at the boundaries that you have already set up. Maybe if you're like some men, you have absolutely no boundaries and you've never thought about it. Boundaries are generally rules and regulations on how people are allowed to engage and interact with you. This is going to be a part of your self-inquiry. Again, what do you need to be met, to be the most functional, to be the strongest version of yourself? A boundary can be, you don't get to speak to me in an abusive tone. That would be a great start. There's many men in abusive relationships, and they're totally unaware of it because it's not so outright, it's not so external. The abuse that's done onto us as men generally is more emotional, manipulative, subtle, artful. The way of the woman has a very high functioning ability to wrap us around ideas of ourselves. So being clear of what you tolerate, what you don't tolerate, on all forms of expression and communication, and not being baited by emotional manipulation. I think it's really powerful to see the ways that you're being emotionally baited already in your life. Again, just using the example of engaging with women. If you're engaging with a woman who is dysfunctional and who is moving from trauma patterns, she can make you feel the worst while all you're doing is trying to do better. And everything that she's not experiencing is because of you. Now, of course, men perpetrate the same thing in another way. We're usually not so artful with it. We're a bit more brash and obvious. So anytime there's guilt that comes up in you, or shame, or you're being pulled in to do stuff that you don't really want to do, but you feel obliged to do it, you need to question that. Why am I doing this? Is it because I don't want to let the person down? But I'm letting myself down to not let them down. So what's more important to me? It's a good question to ask yourself. And if you decide the other person is more important than you, then I can't argue with that, and I never would. That's for you to decide. So guys, right now we're probably going, when's he going to talk about coming? I'll get there, I promise. Everything that I have shared with you in this first hour, everything up to this point, is the most important information for building that foundation. This is what makes you or breaks you. Everything we're going to go into from now onwards is going to be the more practical side, the more educational side, just on our energetics as men and the benefits and why we should even think about retaining. But I really want to preface, if you need to watch this back, do that once the recording is sent out. There's a lot of information that I had to touch in a very quick way. Usually I work with men for months, in some cases 1 or 2 years, to go through all of this to the depth that it needs to be gone through. So it's me cramming it into an hour. So if it feels like it's a lot or it's overwhelming, please don't feel like you have to grasp to anything or try to remember everything right now. Just stay open to the experience. As I said, 80% of what I'm doing is energetic. Okay. So this is going to be part 1 coming to a close. Let's take a 5-minute break. You can get up, move around, use the bathroom, smoke some meth, whatever you're into, and then we'll come back for the second part. So before we move into this part, I'd like you all, if it's something that you're comfortable with, if it feels right for you, I'd like you to place your palms up and rest them on your lap for just the remainder of our call. You're just moving into a receiving posture, which is going to be important for you to receive some of the things that I'm sharing, the energetic information. Again, you don't have to believe in any of it. Just put your palms up. Relax your shoulders. Relax your jaw. Both palms up, facing upwards, is what I said. All right. Be in your power is something that I'm sure many of you have heard relatively frequently, especially in self-development work. Be in your power as a man. I want to be in my power. So what does it mean to be in your power? Maybe you know already, which is beautiful. That's great. For those who maybe aren't so sure of what that means, to be in anything, you have to understand what it is. And you have to understand how that power actually functions. Societally, we tend to have quite a faulty perspective on what power actually is. and the power dynamic. For us as men, our power resides within our polarity through understanding our polarity. Now, I'm speaking about polarity based on how you entered the world physically. It makes no difference how you choose to identify or how someone chooses to be or what they feel more of. The polarity that I'm speaking of is a physical-based energetic system that is in alignment with how we're physically designed. So I just wanted to make that clear before continuing. So the polarity and how we're set up, I started to learn this first kind of by mistake. I've had no training in Tantra ever. I've never been training in anything sexuality-wise. That's not my background, even though that's the basis of what I do know. So I'm almost grateful for not being indoctrinated or brought into these certain ways of how things are told or function, or how they're supposed to be functioning based on the texts and the books. Because when I would work with men energetically, I would notice specific movements from him. And I would notice that his energy was more responsive and would start to open at the base, at his root, at his genital, the level of his genitals and his prostate. And I noticed he was far more receptive and actually magnetic in his chest, in his heart, where he would pull life in order to understand more. The mind and the heart, the upper body for us as men, I discovered was a lot more receptive. And the lower part is outgoing. And when I started working with women, I tried to apply the same understanding because I just assumed in my ignorance that we all function the same. And what I discovered is women are the opposite, where she was actually very, very outgoing in her breasts, her chest, her heart, and up into the throat area, up into the shoulders even. And that she was very magnetic and receiving and receptive in the genitals, in the vagina, the womb, the cervix. Then I done some research and I found out that some other people had figured out that this was also the way that we functioned, and that became very confirmative for me moving forward. So that's the history behind this. As men, we're positive in our genitals, our cock. This is where our power resides. This is the seat of our identity, whether we want to accept it or not. Life doesn't really care what we think about it. That's what I've really come to understand working with people's bodies and working with energetics. If we want things to work a certain way or we think they should work a certain way, life really doesn't care about that. Life works the way life works. The relationship that you have with your genitals, how you embody this area, is going to affect how you experience the rest of your life. This society shames our cock. Shames is part of us. It's dirty, it's bad, it's predatory. It disconnects us from it. It has us experience neurosis around it. The result is deep feminization in men. So what happens when we disconnect from this place? Well, the first thing that happens is we get very stuck in the chest and in the throat. We start to become very emotionally irrational, worked up, ungrounded, reactionary, and neurotic. Because we've moved away from our power center. When we move away from the penis, we start to become very terrified of being authentic in our expression. Because we have nothing grounding us and keeping us in contact with the earth. being embodied in our genitals, in our root, keeps us present in the body. It allows us to feel the earth underneath our feet. It allows us to have contact with our legs. When we disconnect from this part of the body, from our power center, it's the typical nice guy who does right by everybody other than himself. We also have fear of feeling any trauma that's been residing in us because we don't have the strength and the groundedness to hold us as we move through that intensity. So we get even more locked up in our chest, locked up in our shoulders, shut down in our pelvis. All this tension starts to creep into the anus, the prostate, the pubic bone, the hips. So now there's no space for energy to accumulate. So we're essentially being pushed up out of ourselves as men. And because of this, we become manipulative. Because we still have to get our needs met. So we become abusive. Not in every case, but in many cases. It starts to act out. Because that's what you do when you've been put in a corner and just duct taped at the mouth and told that everything that you feel and the way that you feel it is bad or wrong or dirty. Even in relation to masturbation. As little boys were told, that's dirty, don't touch your penis. Don't touch your genitals. If you look at little boys, toddlers, they are always touching their genitals, pulling it, twisting it, just talking to you as they're holding it. It's almost like the center of their reality. It's their inbuilt comfort blanket. This is our place where we go to settle. But we're told that it's bad, it's wrong, it's dirty, it's dangerous. Don't touch it, stay away from it. So we listen because we want to be right. We want to be good. We don't want to upset anybody. We don't want to hurt anybody. So we leave it be. But we still have needs that are bigger than us. We still have desires that are bigger than us. So now we have to creep into the bathroom and lock the door, keep our ear to the door and jerk off, right? Just because we need to get some level of pleasure from how we've been put together. So much of this dysfunction and this perversion starts to creep into this area of our bodies. And I don't care who the man is. I have men who come to me who say, Chris, I'm having sex with women all the time. I'm totally comfortable with my sexuality. I'm totally cool with my penis. I love it. As soon as we bring them into that area, as soon as energy starts to come up in that area, dysfunction appears. Fear appears. Most men are terrified when energy starts to accumulate in the genitals if they don't have ejaculation as a release. Because now what does he do with it? With all of him starting to build up in himself. Because the more of you that you have access to, the more you start to see how fucking insane your kingdom is. The more you're going to be forced to make changes. Your essence will confront you when it begins to build up. One of the most beautiful parts of our genitals and of our cocks and of our penises is that this is the area and this is the center where we actually love from. Because this is where we're positive. This is why when we see a woman who moves us or who we're attracted to, we want to have sex. When women say things like, oh, why do you want to have sex so quick? Like guys just want to have sex all the time. Of course, we're trying to get to our heart because there's a channel that runs directly from our penis to our heart. And when we start to engage with our genitals, if we're doing it unconsciously, which is the way that we've been taught, We're trying to get to our heart, but we never get there because of how we wield our genitals. We're doing it in an unconscious way, so it just begets more perversion, more disconnection, more feelings of emptiness after. But if we can understand that we're put together in this way, it can start to make more sense why we would just immediately want to go to sex. 2 reasons. The first, I want to show her how powerful I am with my cock. I want to show her how beautiful I am, how strong I am, how much I feel about her. And the second reason is because I want to feel love. I want to receive affection. I want to receive intimacy from her, from the feminine. So we're cock-centered. So hopefully that's answering a lot of questions that you may have had up to this point in your life and clarifying a lot of your behaviors. So when we look at the feminization again, what happens when we're disconnected from it? We actually become very untrustworthy. Because within our behaviors, we take on a lot of, we take on self-trickery. We trick ourselves and we trick other people in order to get those very hungry needs met. And the deepest form of all of this is the issues that start to occur physically with our genitals, with our penis, with our prostate. I'm now having men 18, 19, 20 come to me saying, Chris, I have erectile dysfunction. Are you fucking kidding me? Like in your virility? This is what the narrative is doing to us. The way a man's penis responds to life is essentially how he feels about himself. A man who feels powerful, meaningful, impactful, clear, who has love and respect for himself, he's going to be hard when he needs to be hard. And he's not just going to come immediately. Now, there's also other factors to that part of it that we'll get into. But your penis and the health of it and the responsiveness of it is the health of your mind, is the health of your consciousness, because that's what programs it. Nobody here has erectile dysfunction. I promise you. Even if your penis isn't responding right now, your penis is not dysfunctional. The society is dysfunctional, and you've just taken in way too many opinions and assumptions and levels of guidance that have weakened you, that have removed your sword from you. How the fuck are you supposed to feel firm and powerful and beautiful and impactful when you're afraid to speak who you are? When you're afraid to look someone dead in the eye and say, hey, I see you, I feel you, I like you. I wanted to come over here and just show you who I was for a second, because I'd love to spend some time with you. If you have fear in expressing yourself in any way, this is going to be mirrored in the potency that your penis is carrying. Sometimes just speaking, I turn myself on. Because I'm feeling myself and I'm celebrating myself with you. This is what I'm here to fucking do. So I do this, and that shit turns me on, because this is what I'm here to do. Find what turns you on. You don't have to be dependent on somebody else to bring you that charge. We are that charge that we're looking for. This isn't about being conceited or arrogant or any of these negative qualities that are looking to feed on other people. This is celebrating yourself and how powerful you are. So feeling yourself, as I keep saying, is one of the main steps. Feel your genitals right now. Feel your penis. You can even put a hand on it if you want. Acknowledge that part of you. Sit back into it. This part of you will do the work for you when you can really build a relationship with it. Because just feeling this part of yourself is enough to start transforming the room around you. Because that's what we're here for. We're penetrative. We're here to fuck life open. And as long as we stay integrated and compassionate and empathetic and sensitive without being soft, sensitive to other people and life around us, and we mean no harm, penetrate as much as you feel to. Because you're never going to harm anybody with that. You're only going to show people things that they need to see. This is how we love and this is how we support people. We show up powerful. No, I'm not going to change my opinion because you're here. I'm going to love you with my opinion. This is how we love you. So I'm going to be sharing ways that you can reconnect to that area as this call goes on. And to be empowered in this area, you actually want to engage with life. There's no more depression or hiding in the background. Your creativity increases. You become more stable emotionally just by feeling this part of your body. It sounds too good to be true to so many people. But then I give them the practical exercises and they go off and they do it for 2 or 3 weeks. And they come back and go, Jesus, I had no idea how much this can impact how I experience life and how people experience me. When a man walks into a room and women don't see him, but they feel him and they turn, that's because the man is full in his power center. So when he comes in, his energy hits them first. This is the energy that opens them. And many women at this point will go their whole lives without ever meeting a man, which is deeply unfortunate. There's lots of males around the place, but to have a man be present in himself and to allow himself be the man that he's come here to be, not trying to please her or make her happy, but loving her through his realness and his self-respect. So she has something firm to brush up against and to feel her womanhood. This is what women are lacking, because she just has a lot of yes men. Men who dance for her. Men who try to give her everything she asks for, even the childishness in her. That's not how you love her. We love with our firmness, with our stability. And this part will keep you connected with your nature. So you don't get too off track as you move through your life. If ever you're feeling unsettled or ungrounded or panicked, bring your awareness to your genitals. Hold your genitals if that's what you need to do to start waking them up. And I don't care where you are, even if you're at a restaurant. Yeah, because no one's going to say anything if I'm sitting there holding my elbow. They're like, oh, that guy's holding his elbow. But now suddenly I'm a man with my hand on my penis, on my crotch. And now they start to lose their shit. Why? Why is my elbow any different to my genitals? Why does my genitals deserve less love than my elbow? Unless they've been convinced that a man with a penis is dangerous, that a man who feels pleasure is dangerous. We need to start shifting the narrative around this by being ambassadors for men who are healthy in their sexual expression. Even if you're hugging a woman, I do a lot of hugging workshops to have men and women be able to feel each other and connect with one another more. And one of the biggest fears that men come to me with is, Chris, what if I get an erection when I'm hugging her? Because my body starts to respond to her. You're supposed to get an erection when you're hugging a woman. That's what your body does. You're a man. So if she's holding any level of feminine energy, a healthy male body, your penis is going to respond. Why is that bad? Unless she's been programmed to believe that, he has an erection, he wants something. So we need to educate women on what healthy masculinity actually is and how it functions. Because she's only ever met men who've been mishandling her, abusing her, using her, dumping in her, taking from her. We need to educate the women that we come in contact with about, no, this is healthy masculinity. This is a man who's powerful, whose body is alive, and who's responding to your womanhood. And if that's not right for you and that feels bad or uncomfortable for you, then you're at the wrong place. Because you don't want to actually be held by a man. You want to be held by something that's neutral, that's not going to have you feel yourself in the reality of where your life is at as a woman. Stand up for yourself. This is how we love her. This is how you love yourself. Stop hiding your erection. Just because you have one doesn't mean you're going to mount everyone in the park. Which brings me to the next point. Don't mount everyone in the park. So much of our pleasure and having domain over our sexual energy and our sexual expression is about us being able to sit back into our pleasure, into our erection, and let it be just that. Without assuming that, now that I'm hard and I feel turned on, I have to jerk myself off to release it, or I have to go and find a woman to fuck to get rid of it. How about if you were just to do nothing and just feel your own aliveness and enjoy that? What if that was one of the ways that you could meet yourself even deeper? Because just feeling yourself, as I said earlier, is enough to start transforming the room in front of you. Men have questions like, how can I get the woman to be interested sexually in me? How can I engage with her intimately? She doesn't want to have sex with me, Chris. Yeah, because you're not inspiring any movement in her. To inspire movement, you need to be the ignition. You need to be the charge. You need to be the light switch. And you do that by feeling what you feel when she's in your presence. By breathing her in and feeling what her femininity and her beauty is doing to your body. And then you just feel your body and you allow that energy to move through you and just be present with her. Because the more you do that, now she has the time to relax with you. She has the time to feel you really, truly being there with her. And then if you don't act on it, she's probably going to be the one trying to climb onto you because there's so much energy in the room. That is, from a polarity standpoint, how this is supposed to function. Not the way the movies have shown us. Not the way the Disney narrative, which I always talk about, it showed us, where Prince Charming is chasing the woman and is courting her. Fuck that. That's no posture for a man. You show up. This is who I am. This is what I am. This is what I got. And then you shut up and you let her feel you. And then you let her come to you if she wants to. But you never need to try, or you should never be in a posture. Please, please promise me that you will never be in a posture where you're trying to get sex from someone, or where you're trying to convince a woman or a person to be into you. That is not respectful. Sit back and feel your power and allow your power draw life to you. I hope this is making sense, and I hope this is landing. But we can get into it in the Q&A a little bit deeper if we have to. So when we're connected to this beautiful part of ourselves, the natural qualities such as decisiveness, leadership, purpose, compassion, service, protection, all of these things naturally come up through us in an embodied way. There's no more faking it till you make it, hopefully. You're starting at your center, and your center transforms you. So how you walk starts to change. How you speak starts to change. You start to communicate from your cock, which is where all of your words should be coming from. Because then you know it's real. And as you start to integrate more, as your compassion in your heart and your love starts to open, the female part of you starts to open, your communication can start to be more and more integrated, more and more balanced. It can remain firm while also being receivable. But it will change how you experience yourself. So how do we return to that power? The first step is reconnecting to your cock in a healthy way. And the second step is, once we're connected, now we accumulate energy in this part of the body, which develops us physically and spiritually. Because as soon as that energy starts to fill up below, it starts to knock on into and spill over into all the centers above. So let's take a 2-minute break, shake it out, and we'll be right back. Let's begin speaking about some of the ways practically that you can start to reconnect and heal this part of the body. The first thing is feeling the penis. If you don't visit a part of yourself, it will start to wither away naturally. Most men will only visit their penis when they realize that it's hard and they're horny. And then they jerk off, and then they forget that they have a penis again. Or when they're having sex. That's the only role that the penis plays in their daily life. Ideally, you should be holding a felt sense awareness of your penis throughout your entire day, through everything that you're doing. When I ask people and invite people to feel this part of the body without touching it, they often have difficulty because they've been so disconnected from it. So I just want to do a little practical exercise. Just close your eyes. And I want you to feel both of your feet on the ground. Just be aware of the soles of your feet. And you don't even have to move them. Just be aware of their existence. Feel the existence of your legs. Feel your left hand without moving it, just being aware of its existence. Feel your right shoulder. Just feel its existence. And now I want you to feel your penis without touching it. Just feel its existence. Noticing if it's easy for you to feel it, if it's challenging for you to feel it. What it feels like versus what other spots in your body feel like. And you can open your eyes and come back. So this was just to show you how to feel your genitals. Wherever you bring your feeling awareness in your body, whether it's your hand, whether it's your foot, whatever level of energy, awareness, and consciousness that you have developed within yourself, everything rushes to that spot. To keep your penis healthy, online, activated, ebbing and flowing with life force, you have to visit it regularly, daily, always having it be a felt sense experience within anything that you're doing. Maybe you're just walking down the street, feel it in relation to the rest of life. And notice what happens when you bump into someone that you haven't seen for, a few days or a few weeks, or if you bump into a friend. You're walking down the street and you're grounded and you're feeling your penis and you feel great, you feel centered. And then a person you know comes along and says, "Oh, hey, how are you doing?" And in that moment, all your energy down here goes up here. Like, "Oh, hey, how are you doing?" And you pull yourself out of presence. You pull yourself out of your power and you move into social mode. Why did you leave yourself? When I started to notice this in me, in my process, I was like, damn, I need to try to stay down here. Why am I flying up? Like at the beginning, it was out of my control entirely. My body was just shoot 'em up. It's dirty or it's offensive for me to feel down here when I'm with a person. That was my thought process, that I'll make someone uncomfortable if I'm feeling myself in a powerful way. And it took me probably the best part of a year to a year and a half to be able to move through my life with enough awareness that that was no longer happening. But so much trauma and fear would come up in me when I was trying to stay in my power. In relationship to people, I realized that based on the person I was speaking to, I had a different personality and a different face for everybody. Well, if they're an important person, then they need me to behave in a certain way. If they're my mother, it's another way. If it's a buddy that I know for a few years, it's a different way. So everyone would get me based on my manipulative ability to feel out where they were at. But I was never being in myself and honoring myself. And all of that was actually coming from how sexually perverted we've become and how fearful we've been made around our sexual desires, that they don't belong in certain places. Bullshit. You belong anywhere that you step into. Will people start to feel intense stuff in your presence when you're in your power? Yes, they will. Will people start to squirm around you? Yes, they will. Because people are not used to being seen. People are not used to dealing with any level of presence most of the time. It's always so surface level. So you have to get comfortable being with people when they get super uncomfortable. Because this is how we love one another. This is a gift. I also noticed in myself that I was very uncomfortable when other people would get uncomfortable with me because of how uncomfortable I was with my own discomfort. So because anxiety felt horrible for me and I never wanted to feel it, whenever I would see someone going through a similar experience when I was with them, I would try to break my energy. I would weaken myself. I would avoid eye contact. I'd pull away from them in order to try to save them from facing themselves. Examine your engagements with other people, because it tends to be you trying to protect people from themselves. And that's not any way to love someone or to empower somebody. We need to feel how uncomfortable we are. That's a gift. I am forever grateful to the first human who ever held me accountable in that way and just looked at me and smiled at me, had the cheek to smile at me in class. This was my Qigong teacher who impacted my life tremendously. Essentially the only person I've really actually studied with for a prolonged period of time. He just looked at me and smiled as I just fell apart in front of him, and never once did he let me off the hook. Not once did he let me off the hook. I fucking hated him at the beginning. I despised him. Thought he was out to get me. Until it flipped. And I realized that he held me accountable and held me responsible in a way that I'd never been held accountable or responsible before. And that was him loving me. So a part of this process is getting comfortable being uncomfortable. It's kind of all of it. It's almost all of it. Can you find comfort in discomfort? By learning to be in your body, to relax the shoulders, to keep the breath open, to relax all the parts of you that tighten when fear and anxiety creeps in, when overwhelm comes to the surface. So, how to connect? You feel your genitals, and you allow whatever wants to come up to come up. You can also hold it, as I said earlier, if you just want to have a physical connection to it. This can be helpful for people who are very disconnected and have trouble being in their body and feeling it. Just putting a hand on it can be supportive. Also practicing feeling what turns you on, and I don't just mean sexually, I mean in life. What expands you, what excites you, what brings more energy to you. Practice feeling that and then speaking it. The more that we can communicate what turns us on in life, the more that we can verbalize it and let it pass through and out of the throat, the more that we can stay integrated, and the more that energy can get bigger and bigger and bigger in us, because now it's being acknowledged. Does that make sense? Speak what you find beautiful. Speak what excites you. Speak what you like. It will turn you on in itself. And when I say turned on, I just mean it will bring you more life force. Also, feeling your genitals when you're in communication with a woman. Most of your questions around how to engage with her effectively will probably disappear once you start to just connect with this part of your body when you're in her presence. She doesn't give a fuck about what you do. She doesn't really care about your accolades. Her body and her openness and her womanhood doesn't care about most of the things that we have been told that she cares about. She wants to feel you. That's it. She wants to feel you feeling her. If you're not bringing that, you're useless to her. She wants to feel you feeling her through feeling yourself. You cannot feel anybody if you're not first in yourself, because you are your measurement system. A practice that you can do to start bringing back health, healing to this area. I know many of you here who have worked with me before have heard me talk about this, and that's a simple self-pleasure or self-worship practice. I do not want you to confuse this with jerking off or ejaculating. This is about you laying down, taking 20, 30 minutes, even an hour, lay down and bring all of your awareness into your internal body. Bring your awareness to your genitals and start to massage and be with that part of your body. Your penis, the head of your penis, the shaft, the testicles, the pubic bone and the pelvis, the hips, the perineum, the prostate, even right around to the anus area. Start to be with this part of your body in a very present and loving way, where you're not trying to make anything happen. There's no goal here other than you just laying yourself down and delivering some love to a part of your body that has been numbed and disconnected and perverted with friction and with dysfunctional ideas around your sex and who you're supposed to be. Almost the way you'd be loving with an animal or a pet or a loved one. Just put your hands on this part of your body and start to learn how to be with yourself. You probably won't have an erection. That's fine. You don't need one for this practice. When energy starts to swell up in you, you will probably start to get erections, because the energy is starting to open back up inside. The important part of this practice is as you're touching yourself, as you're being with yourself, you're keeping your breath open. So you're breathing in through the nose, exhaling out of the mouth, and allowing some sound, allowing a little bit of sound just to start your process. Because by keeping the breath and the sound open, you allow the body to continue opening more and more and more, and to capacitate to more energy and more feeling. Because breathing and feeling are one of the same. You can't have one without the other. When we don't want to feel, we hold our breath. And people breathe very shallowly in their bodies because they're disembodied and they don't want to feel their trauma. But if that person was brought into free, deep, easy breathing, relaxed breathing, all of their stuff is going to start coming up to the surface. Please don't confuse this with breathwork practice. Breathwork can be very yang. It can be very forceful. It can be very intense in a certain way. That's not what I want you doing. I want you just letting the breath be natural, be deep, but natural. And just allow that exhale, just to let it go. And as you're doing this, as you're touching yourself, and as you're being with your body, you will notice different feelings and different sensations arising in your physicality. Let them arise. At a certain point, men will come back and say, Chris, I've been doing it for a week, and yesterday, out of nowhere, all of this grief just swelled up in my chest, and I just burst into tears. And I was crying for 90 minutes, like a baby, just wailing. Stay present with whatever comes up in you. Don't put a story to it. A lot of guys will start to feel stuff, and they're like, oh, this is great, it's working. Right? And then he disconnects, he breaks the energy. So when something comes up, just do your best to stay present with it and to follow it. Just let it guide you. Stay with it as long as you can stay with it, until there's nothing left to stay with. This is how you discharge trauma. You feel it until there's nothing left to feel. And now it's done a full cycle. But because we just touch on our trauma and come back off of it because it's too stinging and too prickly, we never actually get anywhere with it. So please do this self-pleasure practice. You may be bored at the beginning, or there may be a whole range of different feelings or experiences that come up. Just do it every day for a month, and then make your mind up after. Now, I'm not going to hold your hand. I'm not going to babysit you. I'm not going to check up on you. Or this is up to you. You either want it or you don't want it. And some of you will do it, and it will change your life. And I don't say that lightly. And some of you I know will not do it. So not much will change. And that's just the nature of the numbers game. My wish for all of you is that every single one of you will commit to this. That would be so beautiful. If every one of you could just do this for a month for yourself. No expectation. Just to love on yourself and to get lost in yourself. When I first started doing this, I arrived to it by mistake because I had a pain that I was carrying for about 4 or 5 years that was in my left hip, in behind the bone of my hip that was just above my pelvis. And I started to be with this area. I spent a lot of time with my hands on this area and trying to figure out how to touch it, be with it. And because my genitals are so close to it, this energy, as it started to build and open and that pain started to heal itself, energy started to move down into my genitals, and it was almost like I was being with my penis. And I'm like, whoa, this kind of feels like something important here. So then I went to that area and I started to be with that, and that just blew my head off my shoulders. I just sobbed like a baby because I had realized that that part of my body, I had so much sex. I had jerked off so much. I had been in many relationships. But I experienced that this part of my body had never actually been loved on. It was never brought any tenderness. It was never brought any gentleness, any sensitivity. It was usually just grabbed like a half-live fish and shook around until it spat, to use a disturbing metaphor. So the women that were engaging with me, because they were not conscious and because they did not understand how to be with a man's body, because they were taking direction on how to please a man sexually from disconnected men who learned about it from porn, now I was getting the raw deal, or the raw end of that stick. As soon as I started to be loving with this part of my body, so many things started to open in me. And it became one of my sole practices for about 2 years. And it transformed close to everything. There'd be so much shame that would come up, so much anger in the guise of frustration or boredom, telling myself, well, this is boring. I'm bored. I would have to hear myself say that all the time because I just wanted to watch porn. I wanted stimulus to get hard so I could jerk off. It's like my penis was confused. It's like, what is this shit? But I stuck with it, thankfully. In my stubbornness and in my unwillingness to quit, I stuck with it, and I reached a point where everything flipped on itself. And my default place went to the other way, went to the healthy side. Because our penises are actually supposed to be incredibly sensitive and attuned, so that when we enter a woman, we can feel absolutely everything that is moving in her, so that we can be of use to her, so we can be of benefit to her. I realized that my penis was not just a hard piece of meat. I realized it was actually like a spiritual probe, as creepy as that might sound. And I realized when I was being with partners in my life that when I was entering her, if I would place all of my awareness on my genitals and on the head of my penis, and use some of the things that I'm going to share with you later to cycle energy so I wouldn't ejaculate. Because as you build sensitivity, now you want to come more, but I'll get to that. But I noticed as I started to enter her, I would start to feel, or my penis would start to register how she needed to be made love to today in this moment versus 10 minutes from now, which her body will actually be looking for something else. So the penis has its own intelligence. Now we have two heads for a reason, and they both serve their own purpose. But this head has no place in sexual intimacy. This is what's in charge of sexuality. Yeah, this is where sexuality exists, where all our beliefs and our thought patterns and our perversions, everything gets crammed in here. And then we think about sex, but we're very not sexual. Even people who talk about sex all the time, energetically, they're not actually vibrating in that way. The same thing that I share with women who talk about love. So yeah, you talk about love all the time, but you're not feeling it. You're not embodying it. You're just talking about it. The work is about the embodiment of all of these principles. So your penis is actually built to be able to enter a woman and to penetrate her, not just physically, but also with the amount of electricity and fire and charge that it is naturally generating through its health. And this charge actually moves through the woman's body in perfect formation because she's built to receive this charge. And without this charge, her life gets very fucking boring. And she does not feel sexy. She does not feel alive. She does not feel nourished, and she gets locked in her head. This charge is what assists her in staying in her body and feeling. And as it moves through her, if you are sensitive enough and if you get to a point of understanding yourself to a certain degree, this energy starts to open parts of her and to support her in healing parts of herself that she could never do without that charge. Just like when a man meets a truly embodied woman who's here in unconditional love and her heart is bigger than the planet, that blows him open. And you're just brought into tears. All your trauma comes up. This is what polarity is truly about. And we need to start appreciating the value of a man and the value of a woman, how different they are, and the value of what they have for one another that we cannot source anywhere else. So this is another big reason to bring health and energy back into your genitals, because your penis will teach you how to be with her, how to make love to her, how to fuck her. The final part of how to connect to this part, we got to protect our testosterone. Statistically, whatever that means, statistically, men of a certain age now have less than half of the testosterone that their father or grandfather had at their age. There are many reasons for this. A lot of it is to do with the foods, the way things are processed, the types of clothes, the styles of clothes that we wear, how tight men's belts are. You know, there's lots of things, pollution, electromagnetic frequencies. There's a lot that's kind of against us in this realm, but I truly believe that we can work with it without having to exhaust ourselves. We can just take some practical tips and understand some things that can support us in reclaiming and actually supporting our testosterone, our male hormone, and staying intact in a time where everyone's trying to feminize us. Your fear of engaging with confrontation, or your fear of engaging with life, or your fear of moving into leadership or initiating things, a lot of this has usually got to do with, yes, the programming and the conditioning that's been put in us, but because of that programming and conditioning, it's impacted our testosterone production. You can see a man who's virile in himself. Maybe he goes into a relationship with a woman who's traumatized and who just beats him up and emasculates him and tells him how bad he is and how weak he is. And you see that man 6 months later, he's put on weight, he's got some man boobs, he feels low on himself, he's fatigued, he has no desire to engage with much of life anymore, he's scrolling all the time. Now, he hasn't taken in anything different, he's just been in an environment that's emasculated him. Testosterone responds, and now his levels are incredibly low. Leaving that relationship and correcting himself and clarifying himself will raise all of that again. So in terms of testosterone, there are different things that support it, such as supplementation, just to keep the body healthy. Zinc, as you all probably know, is a huge mineral or component that we need, that our body uses, that it's stored in the prostate, and that supports healthy testosterone production, healthy hormonal production. So making sure that you're getting adequate levels of zinc, whether that's from good quality supplementation or whether it's just from your diet. So you can do your research on that. I often actually see men who have premature ejaculation problems totally cure the problem by taking zinc supplementation, which was fascinating when I first encountered it. Men who suffer from wet dreams, they take some zinc and it stops the problem because it starts to strengthen the prostate. Qigong, any energy practices like Tai Chi, Qigong, meditation, anything where you're in your body and slowing down, aware of how you're feeling, being connected to the moment. This, of course, is going to support everything we've been talking about here today. Getting good quality sleep. Sleep is essential to our hormone production. If you're an all-nighter, it's probably not helping your vitality. If you're on screens late at night, it's probably not helping your vitality. Having restful, deep sleep, setting up your evening and your day to support you being able to move into deep relaxation and sleep. That's really going to support you as well. Stress, moving too fast, that not only depletes your testosterone very quickly, that not only removes your desire and your wanting to engage with life for women, but it also increases your prolactin, which is the hormone which also arrives when you ejaculate, right? When we ejaculate, that's why we get sleepy. That's why you lose your erection, because your body starts to flood you with a whole range of chemicals. Prolactin is one of those things. Now, prolactin is used for women to develop their mammary glands, which is their breasts. Prolactin is used for women to be able to breastfeed. It produces the milk. It supports milk production. It's also in beer, which is why men who drink a lot of beer have man boobs and big bellies, because all this estrogen is starting to be produced in the body. Soy is not going to be so good for you. Tofu, you don't want to be a soy boy. You definitely don't want to be a soy boy. I'll speak a little bit about diet near the end of this as well, and foods that I eat and that I recommend to people. But in terms of supplementation, zinc, D3, vitamin D3 is a building block of testosterone and sex hormones. Most people are not getting enough of it. The darker your skin is, the more of it that you probably need, because you have issues absorbing it from the sun. And one of the biggest things that we can do to support our testosterone is, drumroll, refrain from ejaculating. Okay, everybody, welcome to the event. So let's get started. Ejaculation. So let's move into the kind of core point of this workshop today. Let's talk about ejaculation and everything associated with that. Everyone can hear me clearly? Okay, great. Firstly, why is it unnecessary? Because if you're wanting to start practicing semen retention, especially if you're someone who's having sex, then you kind of need to understand what it's doing and why it could potentially not be so supportive for you. The fact that you're here, I assume you already are in contact with at least some of that understanding or awareness. When we ejaculate, the fluid is carrying a huge amount of life force. Enough life force to actually create a new life or many new lives. Our power center, which I often refer to as our God center, because it's our creative center. It's where we bring that God energy forward, that life energy that we can literally impregnate with a seed, with a sperm, and new life begins. This is another reason why you should be worshiping your genitals, why you should be worshiping your cock, because it is that center that holds so much potential, so much information that we have no conscious awareness of, that we are not even close to understanding how it does what it does, but it does. And speaking of worship, just a point that I missed, when you can connect, ways you can connect to your penis. If you are in relationship with a woman, cock worship in partnership is really, really powerful. So you can have your own practice, and if she loves you, she'll also allow you to lay down and to receive. And for maybe an hour, you just lay down and she just massages your genitals. And she is in her body, in her love. And she's learning what it means to devote herself to this part of her man. So her man becomes even more powerful for her. When a woman really knows how to engage with a man's cock in an artful way, without trying to pull him into ejaculation, but actually cycling energy through him, our hearts open so much and we're pulled into really, really deep healing. So please invite your partner into that if she's looking for ways that she can love you better or ways that she can support you better. And vice versa, she also gets to lay down and receive while you be with her center, which is her breasts, her nipples, her throat, her neck. Because that'll bring her to some very, very powerful places. So with ejaculation, understanding that it holds so much life force. And if we continue daily or very frequently to just spit this out, of course we're going to start removing from our bank balance. We're going to start running into deficiency. And when we have deficiency, there's a whole bunch of signs and symptoms that this can begin to create in our lives. The ejaculate is also full of minerals. As I said, prolactin is released when you ejaculate. Most men, in most situations, will lose their erection, at least to a certain point after they ejaculate. Their desire is gone. There's no more leaning to engage. Many men don't even want to be around a woman after they ejaculate. Raise your hand if you've had that experience, where you're like, all right, I'm done. I don't know why I don't like you anymore, but I don't like you. Yeah, that post-nut syndrome, I believe it's called. So you don't want that to be something that's dragging you around. Yes, as Felix said, it depends on the woman, exactly. That's a very important point. So this loss of desire can start to creep up. This general malaise and fatigue can creep up. A lot of men will actually feel a lot more unstable and emotional and feminized and erratic and unsafe for even 2 or 3 days after he's ejaculated, depending where he's at in his process and where he's at in terms of his health, his general health. Because especially if you have health issues that you're working with, you really need to be holding on to this energy because this will support you in your healing process. Yeah. And excessive ejaculation will cause emotional imbalance. It will cause physical imbalance. And when we're young, when we're in puberty and the age up until probably, 30s, late 20s, 30s, this is usually when men can start to notice, I'm feeling a bit tired, or I feel a bit strange after I'm ejaculating. Other times men will be so numb and so disconnected from themselves that they won't actually feel the effects of ejaculation because being depleted is all they've ever known. So they try to find being energized within the depletion. So they think they're actually energized and they think they're alive and they think they're accumulating. But when they start to move into this practice and they retain for 2-3 weeks or a month and then they let it go, they're like, oh my God, I'm dying. And they feel what's actually happening when their energy increases, how much it actually can drop out of them. Yeah. So it's challenging communicating this to some men, especially men who think that they're not losing anything when they ejaculate. It's only because they didn't have that much to begin with. So please take that into account. And the more that we can hold, the more that energy builds and accumulates, the more of ourselves that we have the pleasure of being able to meet and feel and know. And that's what all of this today is actually about. It's about you knowing yourself more. having more domain over your energy and your life force and what you choose to do with it. So how to, how do I do it? How do we need to do it? What's the way to do it? Well, the first obvious one is stop ejaculating. That would be my first piece of advice. Just choose to remove it from the table, remove it from the list of options for the day. And also realizing that it's a lot about mindset. The mindset that we have when we're approaching sex or self-pleasure. Whereas before, sex was to get off. It was to come. It was to release. But if you're not ejaculating, now what is sex? And that's a great question to ask yourself, because that goes even deeper. Well, then what do I need a woman for? As fucked up as it might sound. This is true for us, right? Especially if we've been in that unhealthy cycle of having women there so we can ejaculate, so we can get off. This opens up a whole new realm of possibilities, because now sex has to become something else that does not involve ejaculation. So how do I know when I'm finished? That's another question I get a lot of. I'm not going to answer that right now because it's probably not necessary. But it will definitely have you eat. It will have you ask more questions of yourself, trying to clarify, well, why do I want a woman in my life? And what type of woman do I want in my life? If now I'm not just here to ejaculate. Maybe I need her to be way softer. Maybe I need to feel her womanhood in a healthy way. Maybe I need to feel support from her. Maybe I need to feel her courage when I'm making love to her, when I'm fucking her, that she's going to feel me. Because if she's not willing to feel me, then what am I there for? Because I'm not ejaculating. So what do I get from this? Right? Where's the exchange? Because the exchange is love. The exchange is intimacy. The exchange becomes connection. The exchange becomes the fact that after you be with her, when you move out of sex, now you have so much more energy cycling through you than you did before the sex. That you get to bring to your mission, that you get to bring to clean your life up, that you get to put into channels of higher order, where you get to focus on more important things. This is the beauty of having more energy and more life force, more sexual energy with you. Beginning the process of semen retention, especially in the moment where you're having sex, and that moment comes where all this feeling comes up and you want to ejaculate. You're like, oh, this feels so good. Just today, I'm just going to do it today. And you have that conversation and you convince yourself, because it feels so good. You let yourself off the hook because you're such a good guy, and you let it go. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. But if we are not very clear on the consequences of ejaculating, the impacts, the negative impact of ejaculating all the time, if we're not aware of those things, or if we haven't felt in our body, oh, this sucks that I just can't, like I feel how depleted I am and I don't like it. If you don't have that experience, it's going to be very challenging in the moment when all that energy comes up in you to choose to go a different direction with it. So sit down with yourself, get a pen and paper, and start making note of all the negative impacts, the things that you notice that are not so supportive for you when you do ejaculate. And beside it, you can list some of the benefits, the pros of how you feel when you actually hold on to your seed, to your power. And that's the mindset shift that I'm talking about. I don't want you guys talking about retaining anymore or holding on to something. Holding on is okay, but the retaining word is not so advisable. Even when you're in sex, a lot of guys will approach this and their whole sex will be about them not coming. The whole practice is, I can't come, I need to not come. And they're navigating the whole process focused on not wanting to ejaculate, which of course, energy follows thought. So that drags them directly into ejaculation, or at least pressed up against the wall of it. And that's not so enjoyable. So the mindset is simply, I'm choosing to hold on to my power. It's not that you're retaining. It's just that you're choosing to hold on to your power. That's the best case scenario where everybody wins. Let's talk about NoFap a little bit, because I think that's probably where a lot of you guys maybe heard about retention and not ejaculating. I disagree with a lot of how NoFap communicates itself. I see the neurosis that it causes in men because I have to work with them. I see the fear around sexuality. So just to clarify for anyone who might not know, NoFap just is a movement on the internet that was started to encourage people not to jerk off. So jerking off is also known as fapping. So it's called NoFap, and it's a movement that has thousands of men be a part of it. And they will literally count their days and they'll communicate with each other and say, I'm on a 30-day streak, or I'm on a 42-day streak. And a streak is when you haven't come. And there's hard mode and there's soft mode and there's all these different things that, again, it's typical, men, we get stuff and we want to create a structure with it. And then we fuck up the life essence in it because we want to control it all. So that's just a typical example of that happening with something that really shouldn't be engaged with in that way. You will ejaculate. As much as you try to hold on to your power, as much as you start learning about yourself, you will trip up. You will go too far. You will, lose yourself in moments. That's a part of the learning process. That's a part of the recalibration. When you inevitably do release, enjoy it. Don't attack yourself. Don't guilt yourself. Don't shame yourself. Don't tell yourself how weak you are and beating yourself up. Enjoy it. Enjoy the aftermath of it. All of it, as much as you can. Be disciplined that my intention is to not ejaculate. And I'm going to do everything that's currently in my ability to cycle the energy and to open myself more without letting go of my semen. But also be compassionate. Be disciplined, but with compassion. That you're human and you'll make mistakes and it will run away from you at times, and that's okay. And if you can have that relationship to your process, you will go much further in your development. And there will be a lot more love and potency and empowerment in the practice. Yeah. But again, the discipline is important. Don't get soft in the discipline if this is really something that you want to learn to do. There's a lot of information out there about semen retention, especially the Taoist forms of information. Mantak Chia, I playfully refer to him as a research artist because what he does is he researches Taoist texts and then he fits them into models that will sell and that will be appealing, and then he shares them with people. I'm going to share the way that I choose to take in information, and then you can choose if you want to do the same thing or not. I always first look at the person who's sharing the information because I want to feel their energy. I want to feel, is there any part of me that wants to take in any part of what this other person or this man is holding or resonating at or vibrating at? Is anything about his life force something that's real and powerful and true and authentic? And do I want to allow that to essentially guide me in something? My response to Mantak Chia and why I've never really went into that direction early on in my process was because it never resonated with me. He never resonated with me. The content may be great, the writings may be great, the information he's passing may be great, but I didn't feel any embodiment of it from him, so therefore I can't trust him. And please, this is not to talk down about someone else's teachings or anything like that, but I know that these practices are very worldwide known, and they're getting bigger and bigger as these movements and as these levels of consciousness develop. And I'm having men come to me more and more now, having physical issues, creating physical damage in their bodies, because they are employing some of these very tension-based practices that involves clamping and squeezing and holding and shutting down the natural flow of energy. And it starts to create problems. Please never use the $1 million point technique. I don't know if, raise your hand if you've heard about this. Okay, some of you have, some of you haven't. It's essentially, as you feel like you're going to start coming, you get your finger and you jam it up into your perineum and you stop the flow of fluid. I have met men that have irreparably damaged their reproductive system by forcefully applying this practice. Also, there's a practice where they grip the penis and they squeeze the base of it so that the ejaculate doesn't come up and out. This isn't listening to the body. This isn't trusting the body. This isn't learning how to work the body. If the train has already left the station, then you've missed out, right? You missed something along the way. My intention with you is to teach you ways so the train never leaves the station. So you can separate the ejaculatory process from the orgasmic process, which are two separate things. Ejaculation happens through tension, through spasm, through twitching. Orgasm is just a free flow of energy throughout your entire system. But oftentimes they both go together, because when we are afraid of feeling, when we are not used to being in our bodies, we clamp when a certain amount of energy opens. Basically, when we hit our limit of pleasure, the body starts to tighten up and then the body evacuates itself. So the real lesson is about relaxation so that we can avoid the tension part, so the tension doesn't even come up, so the train doesn't start to leave the station. That the relaxation is what's actually supporting our ability to stay present while continuing to open to more and more and more pleasure, more energy in our body. And I assure you, this is terrifying. I was sharing with the group recently, only a few days ago. I think some of you guys are here right now. That the first time I experienced feeling the desire to ejaculate come up at me, like I was reaching that point of no return. And in that moment, I could feel the spasm, and I chose deep relaxation. So I chose to just let everything go and fall back and surrender, and to release the anus, release the pelvis, release the legs, release the jaw, release the shoulders. Ejaculation never happened, but it felt like my chest was about to explode because now my heart started going into orgasm, and I've never experienced that. It felt like my face was starting to lock up. There was so much energy funneling through my body that I immediately started to panic a little bit, and I had to remind myself to keep relaxing. I could only do that for so long, and I closed down on myself, but I realized after that Okay, first of all, whoa, what the fuck was that? Because it felt like a deeply spiritual experience, something so intense. I've never experienced that before that point. And secondly, I looked down and I hadn't ejaculated, but I felt like I had ejaculated, but from my heart, from my pelvis, from my hands, from my face, from my knees, from my feet. We only ejaculate from the genitals because of all the blockages that surround that area, from the dysfunction that's been fed to us. All the fear in our system closes down our physical body, and it's got nowhere to go, right? So we get aroused and the energy swells and swells and swells. But if we're not open in the diaphragm and open in the breath and open and relaxed in the body, the energy has nowhere to move to, only down and out. This is a really important point. You're only ejaculating because there's nowhere else currently that your energy is being invited to move to. So I just wanted to mention that about the safety of not bringing a lot of tension into your practice, because that will inevitably bring you into ejaculation anyway. Relaxation is going to be your teacher. So some of my recommendations, and this also goes for premature ejaculation, even for erectile dysfunction, anything you think you're experiencing right now, where you're unable to just stay in your body and to be in sex, which is the point of it, being in sex. Going back to what we had previously mentioned about what's the point of sex now if I'm not ejaculating? Maybe your new goal or your new mission or your new intention for sex can be, how deeply can I be with her? That's my goal. So I'm not trying to get anywhere. How deeply can I just be in myself, feeling myself as I'm with her? That's a solid intention to have. So the first recommendation for circulating and accumulating energy safely, I just spoke about it, relaxation. Tension is what's creating your premature ejaculation. Physical and mental tension, it can be either one. A lack of presence. What often happens is when tension comes up in us, it begins with a fear or a worry or a thought process. And then we start to experience anxiety and tightening around it because we're trying to hide it. Because we're not allowing it to be expressed. We're not allowing it to move. Just like sexual energy, if you want to feel what I'm talking about, sexual energy needs to move. Sexual energy is the very same as your emotional energy. There's not much of a difference. So if you're afraid of your emotions and afraid of allowing your expression to move, you're going to have a challenge when you're in the bedroom, when you're attempting to navigate sexual energy, which is even bigger. So relaxation, letting the body open, surrendering to what you feel, focusing on relaxing the jaw, releasing the jaw muscles, which, when our jaw is tight, it shuts down about 14 energetic channels that run through our body. So relax the jaw, relax the muscles of the mouth. Second point is breathing. Breathe deeply in through the nose. Circulate your breath. Breathe deeply into the belly, slow and deep. Your breath and your focus and your feeling in your breath will give you something to ground into, especially at the beginning when you need something to hold you accountable. Fill your belly with breath. Fill your balls with breath. Breathe into your cock when you're inside of her. Fill the penis with energy, with breath. Obviously, the feeling part, the awareness part, staying in the body, staying with whatever's coming up. And finally, sound. I say this to men, and men are like, I'm not making sound. And when you look at people who have sex a lot at the time, especially if it's very disconnected, or it's people who are not used to feeling stuff, it's very quiet. It's that's what a lot of sex is. All that says, all that's communicating is, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, I don't want to feel. Oh, that's too much. Oh, but it feels good. And that's the dynamic, right? It's just back and forth, and that's it until someone goes, it's done. And then it's over. So our sound, I have never found anything more powerful at allowing us to recapacitate to an increase in energy and to circulate energy as effectively as your communication of it. So you're in sex, and maybe all this intensity starts to come up, and you feel like you're starting to approach orgasm, or you're like, shit, I'm getting close to ejaculating. Communicate from your cock. Start to let that energy have a sound. All of your pleasure, give it a sound, because it's the vibratory rate of that sound that starts to ripple through your body, opening up your other centers, opening up your throat, and having a full circulation. Feeling the intensity in your genitals, feeling the energy building up in you. And give it a sound. But for this to happen, you have to be connected to yourself. You have to be deep in feeling. There may be fear or insecurity come up in you of, I don't want to make sound. That's weird. Okay. You're limited. You're going to be limited. Once you start to communicate from your cock in sex, some things start to happen. The first thing that starts to happen is energy now has a way to move through you to every piece of you that needs the energy. It can start to move upwards and outwards rather than just down and exploding outwards. The second thing that starts to happen is you start to feel yourself get bigger and stronger. Your vibratory rate of your sound makes you get even bigger energetically. Another thing that happens is it starts to open your primality in your body. This is the energy that she wants to essentially fuck her heart open with. This is the energy of ravishment. This is the animalisticness that women want to be able to feel in you so that she can fully open and surrender to that energy of fuck that you get to bring to her. It's that deep growl. It's that lion energy in you. But if you're performing it and you're trying to sound like a lion, that isn't going to do anything because it's disconnected. If you just stay focused on feeling and giving the feeling in you a sound, that authenticity is going to open her and arouse her and turn her on to levels that she may never have experienced before. This is who I am being fully expressed in relation to the amount of pleasure that I'm feeling. And when she feels you feeling you, and when you feel you feeling you, you get bigger, and she starts to get fucked by something so much bigger than both of you. And this opens her so deeply. And the more intensity you feel, the more she starts to feel. And the more she starts to feel, the more you're like, oh no, she's going to pull me into ejaculation because now she's getting all sexy and shit. Right? Now she's making all those noises that just like make me want to ejaculate. In those moments, you need to get even louder in your expression and even deeper in your breath. Meet her there. This will change everything. Everything. But this is you opening your body up. More energy needs more space. So your sounds are making space. And it also grants you the permission to be able to ride her orgasmic waves without getting pulled into ejaculation and missing out on actually receiving from her. Does this make sense? Is this clear? Do you get a sense of why you'd have to wait around a bit longer to be able to receive what she has for you? Because we open differently, right? We penetrate her so she can open. But to penetrate her beautifully, we have to be open. Because there needs to be compassion connected to our penetration. There needs to be that sensitivity connected to it. Our ability to tune into her, to sense her, to feel her. And when she starts to open and her chest starts to come up and her shoulders start to splay and her fingers start to open and her toes start to clench and her whole body starts to move into that receptivity, now we can fall into receptivity in our hearts, in our chest. And we get to allow her to ejaculate out of her chest, out of her breasts, out of her heart, to nourish us with what she has for our development, for our healing. And that's a process of learning how to become receptive in our chest, in our hearts. If you're holding a lot of tension here, a lot of tightness, like a lot of people are, fearing love, fearing feeling, fearing vulnerability, then there will be a lot of hardness and armoredness in this area. So your self-pleasure practice, your self-worship practice of being with your genitals will also allow you to be with your chest. You'll be able to open these parts of yourself. So you become more powerful when you're outgoing and you become more powerful when you're receiving. You become integrated. None of this is a thought process. All of this is embodiment. Yeah, all of this is you being in the body, feeling the body. Slow down in sex, in life. Why are you going so fast? Many men will want to practice semen retention while continuing to have sex the way that he always has been and expecting different results. It doesn't work that way. Slow down. To have incredibly powerful sex, you don't even need to move inside of her. She's not looking for your movement. She's looking for your penetration. She just wants to feel you. And when you start to slow down with her, and when your movements start to become minuscule with her, now it forces her into deeper feeling. It also forces you into deeper presence. You don't actually need to do anything for her to be in multiple full body orgasmicness as long as you choose to hold her in that place. None of it is about physicality. Because if I can do it from the other side of the room or on the phone on the other side of the world without even being there physically with her, then what's the technique? Right? What's the physicality in it? And I'm sharing that with you, not to be braggadocious, but I'm sharing that with you because I don't want you to have to work so hard. It's a lot easier than we've been conditioned to believe it is. It's not your amazing movements and, tearing that ass up that has her open to you and move deeper into orgasmicness. No, but she'll take that if that's all she can get. It's her feeling you. Be totally there with her. That supports her, activates her, initiates her into the charge that she requires to experience that part of herself. She wants to feel you inside of her. Let me re-clarify. She wants to feel God inside of her. So you're either a conduit for that, or you're busy with all your techniques getting in your way. And the busier you get, the less God that can be in the room. Even if women are squirming, saying, I want you to fuck me hard, pin her and say, no, feel me. That'll knock her into whatever she's needing to get into. Women who want it aggressive, women who need a lot of that thrusting, that's because she doesn't feel anything. That's because she's been numbed out by how men have dealt with her in the past. Most men have sex with women like they hate them. Most men touch women and manhandle women in a way where it gives her nothing to reach for. It requires no sensitivity on her part because now she's just having things done onto her. And there's so much that has become unarousing about modern day men and modern day masculinity that now women in the sexual act have to figure out ways to turn themselves on. They're like, moving me, but not like that, moving me in this way. I'm like, what am I? So you could just use a toy at this point because you clearly have no part to play in it, right? Now she's just trying to find the right angle to have her have a little bit of a masculine orgasm. And I know some of the things that I say can sound blunt and harsh at times, but that's the intention. Because they need to be received. They need to land. And most of the way that we've been taught that we have to show up in sex, if we were to just do the exact opposite of that, then we'd be showing up in the correct way. I want you to start noticing your blockages. Yes, there will be time for questions. I want you to start noticing your blockages, especially when you're in your self-pleasure practice. As energy starts to arise, you may notice that certain parts of you start to feel like there's pressure building that ultimately actually leads you into ejaculation. I started to notice that as I was trying to retain or hold on to my power, that I would start to feel a pressure in my lower back, almost like it was tickling me into ejaculation. Or I would feel a tightness in my diaphragm that would start to come on as I was getting closer to ejaculation. So a lot of the blockages that we have make it challenging for us to capacitate to more energy. It gets in the way. So in your self-pleasure practice, be very aware of areas such as the anus, the ass, like inside of your ass. We hold a lot of tension in the anus. I avoided going near my butthole as long as I could until I couldn't ignore it anymore. And through a lot of patience and sensitivity, I would be with myself and I would allow myself to actually insert my finger really, really slowly into this area of my body. Stay with me, guys. And staying very present in that process. And I realized that as soon as I started to get into some of the muscles, some of the tissues, especially around the prostate gland, that there would be pain or there would be huge amounts of tightness. And the longer that I figured out to stay there and just to apply a little bit of pressure to the muscles and just wait, I wasn't doing anything to it. I was just making contact with the tight area, with the hard area, with my fingers. And I was just applying some pressure and staying with it until I would feel that area open underneath my finger, and I would feel a new opening in my body. The first time I done this, I spent about an hour doing this. I had sex a little bit after, and I had no desire to ejaculate. But I was able to be totally present. I was able to feel so much pleasure. But I never had a desire to ejaculate. And I was mind blown by this. I could just feel space. I felt like my lower pelvis had access to way more space now. So all the tension in this area is actually pushing you out of yourself. So please experiment, spend time with that part of your body, explore that part of your body. It also happens to be where the root of your positive pole is, which is your prostate gland. And our prostate gland it's available for huge amounts of pleasure. There's so much energy that circulates in this place. That is the main area that I really want you to spend a lot of time with, but also just being aware of the pelvis in general, the pubic bone, like right above the penis, pressing into this area, feeling if the tissue is soft or feeling if the tissue is hard, tight, restricted, painful. If it's tight, you're blocking a lot of energy. There's disconnection in that area. We want it to be supple. That's the word I was looking for. We want it to be supple and receptive. So, self-pleasure, Qigong for circulation, feeling your genitals daily. No more porn. Please stop watching pornography. I don't feel like I have to get into that conversation right now because I would be here for another 3 hours. But I assume it's common knowledge that it does not help you and it does not support being disconnected from fantasy. Porn programs you to be turned on by things that pull you into ejaculation quicker. That's why when someone spends years jerking off online, they can just go into an Apple store and they pop a boner because there's MacBooks everywhere, right? And that's where he gets his sex. So you don't want to be conditioned and programmed with that level of fantasy. The less interested you can be in what's sexy, the more powerful you can be when you are in sex. I hope that makes sense. You can ask questions if you need to on that. Horniness is not having an abundance of sexuality or of sexual energy. People can get very confused. They think that because they have the desire, the insatiable desire to want to be having sex all the time or jerking off all the time or ejaculating all of the time, that they have this huge amount of sexual energy. That is actually deficiency. That is deficient heat. That is a yin deficiency, is what we call it in Chinese medicine. There's a lack of fluids, there's a lack of yin, there's a lack of essence, there's a lack of grounding. So all the heat flies up and it gets erratic in the body, similar to an addictive tendency or like a dopamine cycle. When you have an abundance of sexual energy, you are not horny. You are full, you are stable, you are grounded. If something comes along, or if a woman comes along that is holding a lot of energy, your body will respond to that. But it will not respond to fantasy. It will only respond to what is real. The more that you can train and teach your penis and your body to only be aroused by that which is real, the safer you will be and the more domain you will have over your sexual energy. Wet dreams. I know people wanted me to speak a little bit about wet dreams. This is something that can commonly happen when we're retaining and our body's getting used to dealing with more of this energy and more fluids building up in us. It takes energy. Let me rephrase. It requires energy. It requires more energy to hold more energy. It requires energy to hold energy. As you're building yourself up, say for instance, you haven't ejaculated in a week or in 2 months, whatever your frequency is. Let's say you go way past that and you haven't ejaculated in a while and you're feeling like you have so much energy and vitality in your system. Now, let's say you have a really stressful day. And let's say you're in the evening, you're on screens and you're banging away and you're caught up in your head. And then let's say you're very physically exerting yourself, or you're straining your body a lot that day, or you're using your energy in an excessive way. Later that night, you go to sleep and you ejaculate in your dreams, or when you're laying there and you have a wet dream. That happens because when you laid down, you were probably still very caught in your head, or your kidney energy was exhausted. The kidney energy is very representative, or it's represented in the legs. So when we overuse the legs, or if we move to exhaustion, to physical exhaustion, now the body can't actually hold the energy that's sitting at the base of our being. And it flies up and it goes down and it flies out. So being on computers, being on screens very late at night, being caught up in emotionality before you go to sleep, anything that pulls you out of your body, this will possibly result in you not being able to hold yourself when you sleep. A very simple and supportive practice before going to sleep is doing something called lower dantian meditation. And that's just you sitting in any way that's comfortable. You can place your hands on your lower belly, below your belly button, or around the navel area. You can just bring all of your awareness behind the navel. And you can imagine almost like a burning sun, like a bright orange sphere the size of a football. And you can just let your awareness be here, and your breath will naturally bring itself down. The belly will naturally start to breathe from here, and you will consolidate and regather a lot of that energy that has been kind of thrown about throughout the day. You'll bring it back home. And that should support you in being able to hold on to yourself when you rest. There is such thing as healthy ejaculation. I'm not expecting any of you to not ejaculate for the rest of your lives. I don't do that, and I don't expect anyone else to do that. It's totally unnatural. All of our bodies are set up differently. If you're someone who has been ejaculating every day or very frequently, when you start to retain, the experience of holding on to your power might be quite intense at first, because the body, like an intelligent factory, is creating as much semen as you consume, as you require in your daily jerking off or sex practice. So when you just stop and you're no longer releasing it, now you start to have a bit of a backup, a physical backup of fluid. I would say go as long is as challenging and is as comfortable for you as your body is reclimatizing. So if you get to a point where you're starting to feel a lot of fullness in the balls and in the pelvis, maybe you're even feeling a little bit of pain or discomfort, first go there with your hands and spend time opening the muscles up. Spend time breathing into that area, breathing into your testicles, allowing your sound to circulate some of the backup. And maybe that will clear it and you can continue to retain. If it gets to a point where physically you're just feeling really, really in pain or not good, then absolutely I would advise that you allow yourself to release. Don't fight against your body. But I always want you to retain way past your normal way of engaging with yourself. We're retraining the body. So at the beginning, for the first year for me, 3 weeks was like my max. After 3 weeks, I was like, oh God, I need to, like I can just feel it. I need to let it go. After some time, my body had retrained to the 3-week period, and now it was just producing what was necessary for 3 weeks. So the fluid was not backing up, but it was all going into creating more energy for me to utilize in other areas of my life. And over time, that gradually increased to the point where now, if I'm having sex, say 2 or 3 hours every day, if that's the frequency of sex that I'm having, once every 2 or 3 months is usually my frequency of releasing. That's what works for my body. You know, people always want to ask that question, so I'm just saying it before we get to the point where you're asking it. That is usually my frequency, 2 to 3 months. If I'm not having sex, going through a period where I'm focusing on other things and cycling my energy for some other practices and things that I do in my life, then it will be longer than that. But obviously, if you're having a lot of sex, you're stoking that fire, you're creating more fluid, so things can back up a bit quicker. Also, when I do choose to release, this is a very advanced practice that I'm going to share with you. I've never shared this in a group scenario before because for people just starting, it's unnecessary, and I don't want you to even think about it because you'll trick yourself into thinking you're doing it, and it will just give you an excuse to ejaculate. But I'm going to share it for people who are more advanced in this process and for people who are going to watch this back in the future. If I am knowing that, okay, my body's in a place where now it wants to release, and it's good to let the fluid out so we can recycle things a little bit, I will bring myself to the edge of that fluid. I'll bring the fluid to the surface, to the very edge, and I'll do that 50 to 100 times during the course of having sex. But every time I bring it to the front of my being, I'm going to pull the energy. I extract all of the life force from the fluid, and I pull it back up into my body. And I'll do that 50 to 100 times until I get to a point of, okay, there's nothing left in this fluid. This is dead fluid. Then I'll allow it out. So there's the question, how do you do that? This is why it's advanced, because I cannot logically tell you how to do this. It's similar with your mind. Someone asked with your mind, that's one way of looking at it. why it's difficult to communicate and why levels of consciousness start to become more and more challenging to communicate is it's similar to someone who was never born with a hand. Using this example, and he sees someone with a hand, and he sees that person with the hand moving their fingers. And that person without the hand goes to that other person with the hand and says, hey, how do you move your fingers? The guy with the hand just goes, I just move them. I just do it. Yeah, but like, what do you got to do to move them? Do you have to think about moving them? No, not really. I mean, I just move them. This is how levels of consciousness function. When you get to another level, and then to another level, at each level that you go up, you start to know without knowing how you know. But all of a sudden, you just know how to do something because now you have access to that part of your being. This is the development of consciousness, where I just do it, and it's simple. This comes through practice, because I couldn't always do that, and it wasn't always simple. So again, be patient and be compassionate with yourself. We all have to start at the beginning of everything that we step to. Someone's asking, can you be a bit, let me just see what he's saying. Can you be a bit more specific about it? I can't. That's as specific as I can be about it without just talking bullshit at you. It is abstractive. It's very abstractive. But there's no other way to communicate it. I'll let you know if I get to a place of being able to communicate it in a way where it will allow you to be able to do it immediately. So far in my own process, I haven't arrived to that point of my own development yet. But I promise when I do, if it's even possible, then I'll let you know. Yeah. All right. So I just wanted to share that because I've never shared it with people. And I feel this is the biggest body of work that I've released around this topic, and this will exist for as long as it wants to. So I just wanted to put that in there. And knowing that it's limitless, right? This practice is limitless. Age is another thing I want to just kind of make a point of talking to. For the men here who are, just in their early teens or late teens, early 20s, 17, 18, 19, 20, the retention thing it's really great that you're learning about it now, so you can start to apply it. But just know that you have an ocean of hormones and you have an ocean of this energy being produced in you, an ocean of vitality. When I was 18 or 17, I could come 17 times a day and still bench press for 3 hours later that evening, right? There's just this youthful life force that's always creating, always creating. Please do not use my measurement systems of retain for 3 months if you're 19 or 20 years of age, right? You can retain for, I'm not going to tell you. I'm not going to say it. I had to catch myself there. I'm not going to tell you. I want you to listen to your body, and I want you to ask your body what feels right for you. But I want you to push your body without harming your body. And for men who are older, into 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, the older you get, the more precious this has to be for you. Because if you still want to be fucking in your 80s and still being virile and healthy in your 80s, you have to protect this life force in you. And there is definitely a part of it that is not replaceable. We come in with a certain bank balance. We can do things to support ourselves. Some men have naturally way more sexual energy and a larger bank balance in that area, other men have less. So knowing yourself and functioning based on your specifics, that's what's going to help you. But definitely as you get into your mid-30s, 40s, now is your time to start conserving and accumulating. Diet, I said I was going to mention something on diet. Fats, healthy fats, cholesterol, these are all really important for sex hormones, for sexual vitality. There's so much diet information out there right now. Everything can kill you and everything can save you, apparently. In my experience of trying lots of different diets and hearing other people's stories of trying things, I've ultimately arrived to the conclusion that in general, it doesn't really matter what we eat if our energy is unhealthy and low. You could eat a vegan diet and have a heart attack. You can eat a carnivore diet and have a heart attack. The difference is the quality of energy that you have access to. If you don't have an abundance of life force, it doesn't matter what you eat or put into your body. It cannot be assimilated. The nutrients cannot be taken from it, and the toxicity cannot be removed. But when you increase your energy to a certain level, you can really eat mostly what you want to eat. And I'm also cautious about saying this because I don't want to just have people rush for the Cheetos. I don't feel like Cheetos are something anyone actually wants to eat. That's just following an addictive pattern. But in general, whether it's meats, vegetables, fruits, grains, all of these different things, in Qigong, in energy medicine, it's often stated that a healthy person with healthy life force should be able to eat everything. But it's all in balance. You never want to just eat all of one thing. The more balance that we can have, the better. Sure, there may be some foods that mess with you and make you feel sick or that you're intolerant to. Don't eat them. But your intolerance is because of your life force. Your intolerance is because there's an energetic weakness and your body struggles to engage with it, to break it down and to digest it. Healthy fats, for me, avocados, cashew nuts, almonds. I eat a lot of fish. I'll eat chicken. Again, once these places are coming from, or once these foods are coming from healthy sources, where they're not pumped with antibiotics. I don't eat red meat personally. Why? I just don't like it. I don't have problems with anyone else eating it. If it works for you, it doesn't really work for me where I'm currently functioning at. So yeah, I think diet is a tricky thing. It's a tricky part to engage with. Obviously, it goes without saying, don't eat processed junk. I mean, any idiot can just tell you that, right? Just don't eat foods that are terrible. Don't eat foods that are laden with chemicals and additives. You might as well just drink battery acid if you're trying to be a hero. Yeah, no GMO. You're not helping yourself. Also, watch your sleep and your stress levels, as I said. You should be sleeping well. If you're not sleeping well, it means there's other things going on in your life that you need to face. Our sleep will tell us, okay, my camera, the battery has just went. I'm almost finished. You can hear me. I'll get another camera before we jump back on. But stay with me just until we finish. Your sleep will tell you about the rest of your life, as will your relationship with sex. This will also tell you about the rest of your life. So listen to it, take advice from it, and learn from it. Okay. So this concludes the official workshop, the official discourse, transmission, whatever you want to refer to it as.